So, hello. Welcome to the 41st episode of And the Tournament Winner Was, a conversation with the horse racing prize winner from the past weekend. I'm your host, John Gaspar. My guest this week is a repeat guest. Darren Schweiger was also featured in episode 29 after he won the Santa Anita Challenge held on ExpressBet. Darren, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. So Darren is a live money stalwart on ExpressBet in Twin Spires. He's based in New York City. Over the past 3 weeks, Darren has won 2 major tournaments with significant bankrolls. Darren won the Pick Your Prize held at Monmouth and the Stephen Foster Betting Challenge held on Twin Spires. So what tools do you use to handicap, Darren?
So, almost exclusively formulator, with the time form speed figures integrated into the PPs. Every once in a while, if I see something interesting in the running lines, I may look at a replay just to see what my view is of what happened.
Yep.
But for the most part, I stick to formulator. What I'm really looking for are races where I think there's a pace angle that's not completely obvious. Time form guesses which horses are going to be in which position, and I'm hoping that I can find races where I see something different than what I think everyone else is seeing, or at least a lot of people are seeing.
And how do you incorporate the time form speed figures into formulator? Is there a functionality that brings in those speed figures for each race?
There is, and you can see the blue and red coding shows up underneath the running lines, which just sort of helps me get a feel for sort of the pace of the prior races without having to go watch them. And, sometimes the fractions are hard to really interpret without having seen the races or know how the track was playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I use time form exclusively, but I've never had it incorporated into formulator. So that's an interesting angle. I didn't realize that. Do you use any angles when you find pace advantages? Meaning if you have, I don't know, trainer angles probably aren't a good way to do it, but if you have second or third time starters that have shown speed and faded in a fast pace, but now are coming back more fit, et cetera, or is it just race by race and you take a look?
Yeah, it's sort of race by race. Like I said, what I'm trying to do, I think when there's a lone speed or there's, I'm not going to be the person, I'm not going to be the only person who sees that. And so what I'm trying to do is try to find something that I think I see that I think is not super obvious, about what a horse may do in a different context.
And I see you mostly on leaderboards and live contests. Is that your preference for contest format?
Yeah, I would say it's my preference by a wide margin. Every once in a while, you may see me on the horse tourneys, the very big buy-ins that they have a few times a year, just because I enjoy also big buy-ins. And so I may dabble in those, but that would be the exception rather than the rule.
And do you have a format preference in a live bankroll contest, meaning the Stephen F. Foster and the Pick Your Prize had minimum bet requirements where some other smaller bankroll contests just require you to bet your bankroll? Is there a preference to you?
My preference are the $500 Santa Anita contests where you only need to make one bet. But sort of these, I would say the more normal structures where you have to make 5 minimums, I'm pretty used to them at this point. And so I feel pretty comfortable navigating the minimums if I need to. That's how most of the larger tournaments work.
Exactly. So the Pick Your Prize was held at Monmouth Park on June 13th, but could also be played on ExpressBet and TVG. Did you play on ExpressBet?
I did. Yeah.
Awesome.
I regretted that after I won.
Exactly right, because Monmouth's not too far of a ride for you.
Correct.
So the tournament was a $2,000 buy-in event. $1,000 went to your bankroll, $1,000 went to the prize pool. You can make win, place, show, exacta, and daily double wagers. You had to bet on 5 races at $100 each. You had to wager at least your $1,000 bankroll. And the tournament included the full 10-race card at Monmouth. You were allowed up to 2 entries in the contest. And the prize pool, which is deep for the Pick Your Prize, consisted of 10 BCBC seats, 25 NHC seats, and roughly $100,000 in cash prizes, some at a fixed amount to the top 5 finishers, and then some as part of the prize board structure. And there were a record 379 entries in the contest. How many entries did you have?
I had 2.
And do you travel to any events? You said you played this one from home. Do you ever go to Monmouth, or it's usually not worth your time?
Yeah, for when they have the on-site only $300, I probably wouldn't ever go to those. I've been to Monmouth on a non-contest day,
Sure.
but I very rarely go play tournaments live. That's just because my personal life or my work schedule. It's easier for me to play remotely, and if I need to multitask, I can multitask.
Were you at all incentivized, or at least consider going to Monmouth? What they had the $100,000 incentive if you won on Saturday to win again on Sunday?
I noticed it, but I don't know. I thought before the tournament started, I did not think it was a likely outcome to win both tournaments. So I just decided to play at home.
No, I think most people didn't think it was a likely outcome either. After you win on Saturday, it becomes a much higher probability.
Right? Yeah, I probably could have cut some deals with people at the track on Sunday if I needed to.
Absolutely. Handing out a couple of $100 bills as you go around.
Yeah.
So when you start playing these contests, do you have a bankroll goal, like a 5X, 10X, 15X, whatever it happens to be?
So I generally know you need to be around 10X. That's the way I'm thinking about it. But, what I shoot for, I would say varies depending on when I'm pushing. If I push earlier, I tend to aim higher than if when you're later in the contest, you can see the scores, you can make a judgment as to how high you need to push.
Have you come to that conclusion on your own, or have you been following tournaments and decided that's the way you wanted to look at it?
I sort of came to that conclusion on my own. I do think over the last couple years, scores have been higher than when I first started playing the live money contest. I think, 10X was, I would say, a winning score more than half the time. Maybe if you go back 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now, I think it's much less than that. I think it's not rare for there to be 1 or 2 people who really hit something, closer to 20X or somewhere between 15 to 20X.
Yep. And the reason why I asked that question, it's somewhat of a setup. One of my guests earlier that I know that Tony Joe, that was his exact line. If he's pushing in early, he wants a score that's 15 or 20X to discourage people that are behind him, or that they have to take much more risk, rather than if he's pushing late where he knows what the leaderboard looks like.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, in poker, or in, like, I would say more modern poker, where people, it's easier to raise than it is to call. And so especially in some of these contests, depending on the prize structure, you can really disincentivize people to go after you if you post a score that's high enough. They may be happy with second place or third place, or in Monmouth's case, 6th place.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's a great strategy, and it makes perfect sense, especially like you say, when there's a deep prize structure, other people aren't incentivized to chase you because the difference is still significant, but a lot of people were content with a $4,000 NHC seat or a $10,000 Breeders' Cup seat.
Right.
So when you have multiple entries, do you play them in conjunction with each other, basically collude with yourself?
So every contest, there's not one formula that I use in every contest. It just depends on the contest and what my opinions are. At Monmouth, I did do that. It was a very chalky card, and I thought the best way to get a bankroll was to play my 2 entries against each other. If it's a less chalky card and I have a couple of opinions, I may just play a win bet on one and save my bankroll in the other, and maybe play win bet later, or just save it till the very end and use it at the end as a way to hedge against maybe a larger play.
I think that's great. I think that's a great strategy. So you've been at the top of a lot of leaderboards over the past handful of years, and I know that's not an accident. So what do you think your edge is? Is it the handicapping? Is it the betting? Is it the aggression you show? Is it some sort of combination of everything?
Yeah, I think it's like the most important thing in these contests to me is almost race selection. You need to match your opinions with like the the right race to bet on or the right race to deploy your opinion on. I think I've developed I would say a strategy to find those races. And then it's my aggression. If I have an opinion, I'm gonna push it. I want that opinion to carry me to the top of the leaderboard. And if I need to make a play later, I'll make a play later. But my goal, and I think I told you this last time I was on, in an ideal world, I'll win the contest in one bet. I mean, that's the goal. If I have an opinion that I can leverage to win a contest, just putting my money at risk one time.
Yeah, and that's a little foreshadowing for the Stephen F. Foster contest that we'll talk about a little bit later. So you've handicapped the card. You have your opinions in the races. Are you price sensitive? Meaning if you like a horse that you think might be 5-2, but he's going off at 8-5, are you still willing to push in that horse, or will you now go to another secondary opinion on another race where you may get a better price?
I'm not. I usually go into a tournament with more than one race in mind for my initial bet. I like to see where the board goes. Yeah. I don't make my decision purely on value. Like if I think a horse is 2-1, but it's on the board at 8-5, it doesn't mean I'm automatically going to pass. It's more just the context of the contest, whether I have another opinion later, and how I think whatever I would do in that race would fit with whatever I plan to do later. If I don't think taking the 8-5 would actually help me get to the goal at the end, I'll pass and I'll play one of my other opinions.
Excellent. And do you have any specific prize goals when you're getting into a contest? I mean, we all quote unquote want to win, and you're going to make your bets trying to win. But if they're giving away 3 BCB seats and that's the top prize, are you content with third, or are you still shooting for that first spot regardless?
So if it's 100% flat and the top 3 prizes, let's say, are just BCBC seats with no cash added,
yeah,
I'm still aggressive, and I'd be content with third, obviously, since it's the same as first. But I think the only thing that really changes if I was going to make a play that I would be otherwise angling for 12 times my bankroll or 15 times my bankroll, maybe I can tone it down and dial it back to 8 times, 9 times, 10 times, and leave myself, play a couple of other backup bets that would also help me, towards that BCBC seat. But I don't think it would change my strategy in a major way.
And like you say in poker, you're giving yourself some outs, right? Your
That's right.
best opinion for, say, 80% of your bankroll, and secondary opinions a little later on the card for 10% weach.
That's right.
So when we look at the Monmouth Pick Your Prize contest, what races were you focused on? We're going to either try to focus on an early race and a late race, or you handicapped the card. Did you have opinions early and late, or were you just going to play the card as it appeared as you went on? You thought it was going to be chalky to start.
Yeah, sort of the latter. At Monmouth, it's not my most comfortable racetrack.
Yeah.
So I just went straight through the card, starting at race 1, going towards the end. The first race I fired on was the third race of the day, and I don't think I came up with any sort of unique pace angle in that race. But to me, there were, I don't know how many horses, maybe 7 or 8 horses in the race. All but 2 of them were just nothing but speed.
Yeah.
And so for my, normal handicapping, I circled the 2 that were going to be coming from behind or coming from off the pace. And when I got to that race, like the board looked to me just super obvious what was going to happen, which is there was one of the speed horses was going to win, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so I used on both my entries, I used that horse on top with the 2 coming off the pace beneath, all in on both entries, $1,000 and $1,000 exacta. And that's, I hit one of those 2 exactas. Obviously I didn't hit both. And that gave me the 5,000.
So you had that all in bet earlier on both your tickets. You basically effectively merged your tickets, ended up with a bankroll around 5,400. And you you made your minimum bets until your next opinion, which was the second to last race of the card, the race 9, which was the I want to call it the San Salvador Mile. What was the name of that race? Do we remember? The Salvador Mile. What's the Salvador Mile? Just the regular Salvador Mile. Yeah, exactly. So what were you thinking about there? You had 5,400. You were in the top 5 of the tournament at that time. but I also assume you think 5,400 is not going to get you to the top prize of this tournament. It was going to be significantly higher than that.
That's right. So I was in third. I think first was maybe 8 or 9,000.
Yeah.
And obviously a bunch of people had bankroll because it's with the number of people in the contest. And the way I was thinking about where I was I think, so the top 5 people got additional cash prizes in addition to the prize board. I thought the 5,400 was not going to be enough to finish in the top 5.
Yep.
I did think it was likely that if I just sat, I would finish in the top 10 such that I could get a BCBC seat. But I didn't think it was a guarantee.
Yep.
And so I decided, I guess the choice was just sit and hope you get a BCBC seat or try to win, to me, because once you make the decision to play, to me, the 25,000 on top was more than enough to try to win when I'm only risking 5,000. And so I got, one of my opinions going into the card is not that called like Bishop's Bay is a bad favorite or a bad horse, but I thought it was a bad 3 to 5 favorite or whatever it was going to be.
Yep.
And so I was looking to potentially beat that horse. And then I thought the last race was not completely wide open, but I thought there were 5 or 6 horses that could win the race that were pretty logical.
Yep.
And so my 2 options in my mind were to push against Bishop's Bay, pick a horse and, push to try to beat Bishop's Bay, or to try to Dutch, call it exactas in the last race and hope, you hit. When it came down to it, I thought pushing to beat Bishop's Bay was probably the path I felt more confident in.
And the simpler approach too, right?
Simpler approach, fewer things can go wrong. It's, if you have a good win opinion, that's the easiest way to build your bankroll. And so, that's what I did. I knew, I thought the horse was going to go off somewhere between 2 and 3 to 1. So I knew, call it, if it went off at 3 to 1, I was going to get a pretty high score, probably higher than I needed to get. But what I was nervous about was, at Monmouth, the odds board can change pretty quickly. The pools are small. Yeah. So you have a bunch of people in the contest who are firing amounts that are out of whack with the normal prize pool. Sorry, with the normal pair mutual pool. And then you have the CAWs. And so, what was going to happen to the odds who knew what I didn't want to do was to bet 3,500 or 4,000 with some like a backup exacta, and then find out the horse goes off at 2 to 1 and you end up with, 9,000, 10,000, 11,000. And then I was kind of stuck. If I was right, I wanted to win.
Yep.
And so I just took, I just went all in and I bet East Avenue to win the race. And it did win the race. It was close. And it didn't play out exactly as I expected. I thought maybe it was going to get an easy lead and just wire them at Monmouth, because that happens, and it broke in the back of the field. And I thought it was over at that point, right after the break, but it worked out.
Exactly. I was going to say it for those that didn't watch the race. East Avenue was much best on the day, but you were no luck coming down the stretch, because East Avenue missed the break to start, was asked to run into the first turn to show speed. He ends up 4 wide in a 5-horse field, right? It looks like he's really toiling up the backstretch. Gaffleone scrubbing on him at like the half-mile pole, and he's getting just a little bit of response, but still not much. He starts passing a few of the other horses that are cheap, but Bishop's Bay is alone on the lead at 3 to 5 or 4 to 5. I think he ended up going off that. You still got 2 lengths to make up in the stretch, and he keeps grinding and grinding and grinding. And I thought it was legit too close to call watching the race live. I watched it on replay. I thought it was too close to call. They post East Avenue as the winner, and I happened to text you, congrats on a great play. You told me you were watching it on a bad computer connection, and you had no idea who the hell won the race. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I was traveling and trying to watch it on a blurry, small screen. It was stressful.
Yeah, absolutely stressful. So East Avenue ended up going off at 5-2. Darren's $5,400 turned into a bit over 19,000, about 19,500, and that put you in the lead by I think over 10,000 on the second place finisher going into the lost race. Now you can sit in the lost race. You don't have to do anything, assuming you've met your minimum bets. I also assume you think you're safe at 19,000, and if somebody catches you going all in on whatever horse they like in the rest, congratulations, and you take second or third.
That was my thought process. I thought second was probably the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
And yeah, it would have taken someone pushing $3,000 or $4,000 to try to win the contest. And I thought they were, mathematically pretty disincentivized from doing that. It was much easier to shoot at second place. And, I think you end up 10,000 short of first place prize money, but
yeah,
it's you can make much safer plays to end up in that spot than it would have taken to catch me.
yeah. And I was in that spot, so I had 4,000 going into the lost race. And the horse I can take is the 8 horse at 5-1, or I can bet the 5 horse, who at the time was 2-1, just bet $1,000 on my bankroll, try to get up to second, take a little bit of a haircut, but still effectively get three prizes: a cash prize for finishing second, a BCBC seat, and a second prize off the leaderboard. And I didn't think that risk reward was worth it for the extra cash on top. So I think you were even a better position, like you say, that other people that were below you weren't that incentivized to try to get to the first spot.
Right.
And there was a good point, too, that you had mentioned earlier about East Avenue and about betting your $5,400. You didn't half-ass it, right? I've definitely, in my own tournament career, I half-ass it. Like I say, I want 2 shots, so I'll only bet 2,500 on East Avenue and then have to bet 1,500 again in the lost race. If you have an opinion and you think the lost race is wide open, you might as well just go for it and keep it simple and bet 1 horse to win at 5-2 odds.
That's right. I don't get mad at myself for going to 0. I get way more mad and frustrated when I look back at contests and I feel like, the horse that I really had an opinion on came in and I either didn't take advantage of it or didn't take advantage of it to the extent I should have.
Yes.
To me, that's a way worse outcome. So I've trained myself to, I'd rather err on the side of overbetting or finishing with a higher total than you need to than to have my opinion come in and have not bet enough.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that poker analogy makes perfect sense. You can be over aggressive in poker too, but it's usually better to be over aggressive than to be passive.
Right.
Because when you make mistakes in poker and you go broke, you think about it for your next 3 sessions just because you didn't play properly, right? And the same thing in a horse tournament. If you didn't play properly, that's much more aggravating than just going broke and having your opinions be bad.
Right. Agreed.
So with the victory, Darren kept his $19,500 bankroll, a $25,000 cash prize for first, plus a choice of 2 prizes from the Pick Your Prize leaderboard. And what did you choose, Darren?
So I chose a BCBC seat, and then with the second choice, my 2 choices were an extra $9,800 in cash or an NHC seat plus $6,000 in cash.
Okay.
I chose the NHC seat plus the $6,000. I think that those 2 prizes are very close in value, is the way I would describe it. Most contests that gave me a second NHC seat, and most contests where you win an NHC seat when you already have 2, they'll give you something like $4,000. So in my mind, the NHC plus 6,000 was called like a $10,000 prize, and the other one was 9,800. So I'm not sure there was a right or wrong choice, but that was my thought process.
Yeah, I do that same math. I thought, so a few years ago, Brian didn't add the cash to the NHC, and not surprisingly, all the BCBC went first. All the cash prizes that were 5,000 or higher went second, and then all the NHC prizes went last.
Yep.
And when he added this cash kicker to the NHC seats, they're now getting picked in what we would think that the NHC say is worth 4,000. And then the cash kicker is adding a little bit more, and the prizes are coming off the board, I think, more equally that way.
Yeah.
So let's turn our focus to this past Saturday, June 27th. You played in the Stephen Foster Betting Challenge held on Twin Spires. The SFBC, if you will, featured the 12 race card from Churchill. And the Stephen Foster, the feature race, was actually race 11. The contest was a $3,500 bankroll, buy-in, where $2,500 was your bankroll, and $1,000 went to the prizes. You could play win, play, show, exacta, trifecta, daily double. And you had to bet 6 races of $200 each, plus you had to risk your entire bankroll. The prizes for this weekend were 2 BCBC seats, 2 NHC seats, 5 KDBC seats, plus about $23,000 in cash prizes to the top 5 finishers. There were 84 entries in this one. So I'm assuming you were still sticking with your philosophy of one large bet on your best opinion. In what race did you have your strongest opinion?
So I thought, I don't know about strongest opinion, but I thought the 5th race, which was the Anchorage, based on the way the board looked to me, was the best place for me to push on my opinion in a way that would get me to the score I wanted to be. In that race, I would say I had a pretty strong opinion on Pin Up Betty, who won the race, and I had a sort of secondary opinion that the morning line favorite Vive Vouv was a toss.
Yeah.
And so to me, if I have 2 entries, I can toss. Maybe it wasn't going to be the post time favorite, but a horse that was going to be taking a lot of money in the pools. If I can completely toss a horse like that and use sort of my secondary opinions underneath, you can turn what would otherwise be, call it like a 9 or 10 to 1 exacta into something higher, 15, 16.
Sure.
And so I used both my entries again in the same race. I structured exacta bets. My what I would call my A opinion was the 8 over the 3, which was Way to Be Marie finishing second.
Yeah.
And so what I tried to do is I bet enough with my A opinion that if it came in, I was going to be at sort of a score that I felt very comfortable with. And then I played what I would call backup opinions.
Sure.
On the other with the rest of my $5,000. So I just thought about, well, if my opinion is wrong, what's the next most likely thing that would happen? I thought, okay, maybe Way to Be Marie would finish stronger than I expected and would win. So I played a small exacta 3-8.
Yeah.
And then I thought, the other thing that could potentially happen was the 10 just wiring the field. And so I played on my second entry $2,000 exactas with the 10 over both the 3 and the 8. And then I played an 8-10 exacta as well, all for smaller amounts of money. I think if my, call it like BCD opinions would have come in, I probably would have been somewhere in like the $10,000 to $15,000 range, needing to hit another bet. But it turned out I didn't need to worry about that. Obviously, the race played out, and my A opinion came in, which took me to 35 or 36,000.
Yeah, I was a little jealous because I've been chasing Pin Up Betty for her last 3 races. And I thought she had a couple of lousy trips. And then she was in, I thought, good fields on Kentucky Derby Day. And then she scratched out of the field I wanted her in, and she ran on Derby Day and didn't run that well. So I was jealous when she ran today, and I saw somebody did have a big bet on her and cashed in nice. So for those that didn't see the race, Pin Up Betty got a really nice ride from Flavian Pratt, took him in mid-stretch and won by 2 lengths on the wire. It was actually a no-sweat trip when they were at the 16th pole. But the fight was for second. Way to Be Marie was trying to match the move of Pin Up Betty, but she didn't have the same turn of foot, but she was able to grind up for second and complete the exacta. So you cashed a $2,000 exacta that paid $36.18. So your bankroll skyrocketed to $36,180. You really gave you a stranglehold on the contest. So this is what we were talking about earlier with your When you're going to go all in early, you want to put a total up there that's going to discourage other people from chasing you. I mean, so now you're at a 15x bankroll with everybody else trying to chase you in the last 6 races of the contest. So are you considering anything else at this point other than just betting your minimums, or you just wait and reassess at the last race to see where the leaderboard is turned out?
Yeah, so look, at that point, I'm paying attention every race. I would not have made a bet until something changed on the leaderboard.
Yep.
But every race, I would refresh the leaderboard, see if anyone hit anything. Because what I don't want to do is, if someone does make a move, I don't want to necessarily wait till the very last race, because the more choices you have, the better. So if someone makes a move sooner, then I want at least to know what all my options are going to be as the race day is winding down.
Absolutely. So going into the last race, you had about a $12,000 lead over the second place qualifier, as it were. But that person is well known to you and others on Twin Spires, of Matt McJunkin. Now, he's super aggressive as well. So I assume you're thinking Matt is going to fire at you. Are you going to, again, just sit, or just try to move your total up a little bit by making a bet? Or because they're so far behind, they're going to have to make a significant wager in the last race to catch you?
Yeah, I played a small bet, a conservative bet. I didn't, the last thing you want to do is, sort of like lose the tournament by betting too much at the end. And so it's a balance. You don't necessarily, you want to be a little bit of a moving target, but I would sort of err on the side of making somebody hit a bet to beat you. And so, if someone's going to hit a bet, then good for them. Again, I didn't really think they were super incentivized in the last race to really fire big at me, because there was way more to lose than there was to win.
Yep.
For someone, at least in Matt's spot. And so again, I thought I was pretty safe. Thought if somebody hit a bet, sure, they could beat me. I thought it was more likely to come from somebody, who had 10,000 than it was somebody who had 25,000.
Yep.
Turned out not to be true, I guess. It turned out that the person with 25,000 came closer than anybody else. But yeah, it's an unsettling feeling as all the races were ticking by. A lot of, I would say, quite logical horses were coming in, and that's what people tend to play. And I was nervous every time, a result came in and it wasn't a weird long shot that somebody was going to have hit it for a big score. But I got lucky and nobody did.
So when Tam Tam won the finale, Matt McJunkin, who was in second, did hit the exacta, but he still fell $5,000 short of Darren. So with the second victory in 3 weeks, Darren collected an additional $14,000 in cash, plus another BC seat. So how many BC seats have you earned this year?
2.
Okay, that's good. Now, will you still keep playing contest? If you earn another one, you'll be able to sell it at the end of the year, et cetera, or will you avoid the contest now?
Yeah, I'll still play. I think a BC seat is relatively easy to sell for,
Me too.
I don't know, 9,000. So, you take a little bit of a haircut on the sort of value of the contest, but not enough, I think, to dissuade me from continuing to play when it's BC seats on the line.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I have 2.5 now this year, and I'm still playing in BC contests. I mean, last year, between my friends and other people, we were selling them for $9,500, right? You didn't even have to take that much of a haircut.
Yeah.
And there's still a big market. People, for a 10% discount or a 5% discount, they'll take it. So it works so well. And we know enough players that want to play there. So there's a big field or big market for those entries.
Yeah, I agree. It's the best tournament of the year.
That is definitely true. So congratulations, Darren, and thank you for spending some time with me to discuss your strategies and your successes.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Stay hot.
I'll try.